With Generation 9 right around the corner, you might think it's strange to rank the mainline games now and not wait until I play the new ones. Well, my friend, you're forgetting one crucial bit of information. I am a content creator, not a content waiter. As with most rankings, the way I organize this list can differ based on a great number of things. The order I put them in today might be completely different from the order I put them in a few years from now. Tastes and feelings can change with time and growth, and I hope you consider that when I inevitably trash your favorite game. Pokemon is one of the most complex RPGs in terms of party composition. One person's experience with a game could be completely different from someone else's depending on which Pokemon they ran and how soon they decided to start spamming Surf. Each game presents the player with hundreds of ways to play, some more challenging than others. There are moments that we all experience the same way, such as plot, characters, and game design, but these all really come down to taste and, of course, how much you're willing to allow nostalgia to play a part in your opinion. That's right, I went there. I'll be the first to admit that nostalgia plays a significant part in my opinions. That's just how human brains work. And as of last month, I am at least 90% sure that I have a human brain, and most likely had one when I played these games. So, as always, please respect that we all have different tastes, and it's certainly possible that they can change down the line. Now, one taste of mine that certainly won't change down the line is how much I love Raid Shadow Legends, the sponsor of today's video. Sponsors like Raid make it possible for me to put so much time into my videos and make them as great as they can be. Raid has asked me to interview their champion Death Knight on his recent promotion to the legendary champion Ultimate Death Knight.
Heyo!
What's that? Ultimate Death Knight is a different champion? Well, thanks for joining me, Death Knight.
Ah, it's great to see you.
Are you a regular viewer of my channel?
Let's change the conversation, huh?
So, are you excited for this new champion to join the game?
No, sir.
Do you think you'll at least still have loyal fans with this new Death Knight being added?
I shouldn't.
Okay, last question. This one's just for fun. Do you like Xerneas?
Yes, 1,000 times, yes!
Well, Ultimate Death Knight is amazing, and everyone can get this champion during the Death Knight Hunt event.
Oh, he's getting his own event?
Just log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and October 27th, and Ultimate Death Knight is yours for free.
Free? Oh, no.
There's also the promo code DK Rises for a bunch of free items to instantly level your new strongest champion all the way to level 50 and 5-star Ascension.
But they could also 5-star me, right?
Well, seems like it's been a pretty bad week for you, but hey, there's still time for things to turn around. Thanks for coming, Death Knight.
Catch you later.
Check out the Death Knight Hunt event, and don't forget to use promo code DK Rises so you can be sure to 5-star Ultimate Death Knight. And if you are a new player, use my link or scan the QR code right here and get a free starter pack worth almost $30, a free champion Vergies, and this cool in-game loot. Now, throwing all nuance out the window, the worst mainline Pokemon game ever made. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to be that harsh. The truth is, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were just a complete misfire. From the very first announcement, we were told that these were going to be faithful remakes, but the extent of which we wouldn't know until we actually played the games. What faithful remake ended up meaning was a fresh coat of paint and quality of life updates. How about quality of game updates? Instead of remaking Platinum version, which most people considered to be better than Diamond and Pearl, they chose to remake the originals. Even though I like Diamond and Pearl, this was a huge mistake. Unfortunately, Platinum is still the best way to play the Sinnoh games, leaving Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl pretty much pointless, save for connectivity to recent games. The common assumption is that remaking Diamond and Pearl made more sense financially because Platinum sold so poorly. The Pokemon Company might have assumed that more people would have nostalgia for Diamond and Pearl than for Platinum. Then, why include Crystal content in Heart Gold and Soul Silver? Why include Emerald content in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire? It's possible that they just wanted to make a quick buck and push these games out the door as soon as possible. Or maybe they didn't trust ILCA to adapt one game into two. Either way, it's clear that after years of begging for remakes, the Pokemon Company still didn't know what we wanted. While it is technically an upgrade, the graphics and the new Underground just weren't enough to warrant a remake. I know the art style is a big point of contention among fans as well. I'm fine with it personally, but I definitely pick the original's art style over this any day. I'm not going to get too deep into my thoughts on the actual gameplay and story because they're essentially one for one with the originals, which we'll discuss later in this list. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are a great case study in how not to remake a game. Fix the issues. Don't just reskin them and assume we'll be blinded by nostalgia. Next up, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. These entries just had all the qualities I don't want in a Pokemon game. Too many cutscenes, too handholdy, and too linear. These were all issues that have been creeping their way into each installment, and they finally reached their worst in this generation. But what makes the Ultra games even worse than Sun and Moon for me was that they were essentially the same games, released only a year later. I actually liked Sun and Moon when I first played them, but having to replay such a long, drawn-out story filled with cutscenes really ruined the whole generation for me. You might be thinking, well, Mr. Wolf, you didn't have to play them, but I wanted to compete in tournaments, so I did have to play them. The Ultra games introduced new Z crystals that were going to be crucial to the meta. You think I'm sending out a Lunala without its new Z crystal? I might as well forfeit. I'd be a joke. A has-been. So yeah, playing Ultra Sun was a miserable experience for me. I can't justify placing them any higher than this. If I had played it before Sun and Moon, sure, they might be higher on the list, but not by much. Because our next spot goes to Sun and Moon. These games fall victim to all the same issues that plagued their enhanced versions. So I'm mostly going to touch on what I actually liked. I really like how they mixed up the gym formula. Some of the trials were pretty dumb and mind-numbingly easy, but replacing the gym leaders with totem Pokemon was a great way to spark some life into something that was getting pretty stale. Fighting a totem Pokemon required a whole different strategy that could actually get you into hot water if you weren't prepared. I might have lost once or twice to Araquanid because it kept calling a stupid Masquerain to back it up. I was initially glad to see Mega Evolution replaced with a different gimmick, but what we got was actually worse. Z moves provided a great Hail Mary for when you were in a tight spot, but if your opponent predicted it, it was a massive waste. Z moves did far too much damage, and you could get randomly KO'd by an unusual one you weren't expecting. Also, the animations took way too long. Not even turning off move animations got rid of these things. Was it Game Freak's intention to make these games feel as long as possible? We're not out of the woods yet. The next games on this list are the highly divisive X and Y. While attitudes toward these games have softened over the years, as they do with every generation, I haven't shaken the feeling of disappointment they left me with. Like most people, I was so excited to finally play a mainline game in 3D. We were getting a huge jump in graphics and a promising new battle mechanic in Mega Evolution. The hype was intense. However, once I got my hands on the game, I couldn't help but feel underwhelmed. First of all, I hate the legendaries. Well, I hate Xerneas. Xerneas' stranglehold on the metagame in 2016 and 2019 cannot be understated. Their part in the actual game didn't do it for me either. I thought the story was so bad. Stories in Pokemon games have never been good, but this was just abysmal. The rival characters in particular were the weakest this generation, and the map was a mess. What is this? I remember feeling so dumb because I had to take a taxi around Lumiose to find where anything was. Trying to find anything in Lumiose on foot felt like trying to find a plunger in a Walmart. Trust me, it took me like half an hour. It's not where you would think. Speaking of needing a plunger, the next spot belongs to Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. These were games I wasn't disappointed by because I already knew they weren't for me. While not as offensive as they were for some people, Let's Go definitely suffered from its new catching mechanic. It wasn't that interesting and got old quick. If you somehow only managed to play each Pokemon generation once, this would still be your 5th time playing through Kanto. It's clear they were made to bring the Pokemon Go players into the series, so I tend to be more forgiving toward them. They weren't made for me, and they made our community bigger. That's great. I should mention, out of all the Pokemon games on Switch, Let's Go has the best graphics and is the only one to get following Pokemon right, and it came out first. What happened? If it was your first Pokemon game, your first one in decades, or you're a small child, I could see Let's Go being a great way to get into the mainline games. It's cute, easy, and has most of what makes Pokemon good. But as a jaded veteran of the series in his late 50s, I'm not interested. To be fair, I'm not really interested in Kanto to begin with, and the same goes for Johto. That's why the next spot goes to Gold and Silver. Although I think Johto is an incredible region in concept, I think its execution is rather boring. Its size is a blessing and a curse. It allows you to get around much quicker than most regions, but it also makes the game feel small and repetitive. Of course, you could explore caves and rivers that were previously inaccessible, but the rewards you get for doing so weren't worth the time it took to get them. The map also allowed for flexible gameplay, but it actually felt like more of a downgrade compared to Kanto, which had a lot more choice when it came to the order you tackled it in. And we didn't have to deal with a horrible level curve because of it. Of course, the real reason Johto is so small is because of Kanto. As I said before, the concept, incredible. The execution, not so much. Kanto feels so much emptier than it used to, and ends up just being a boss rush grind fest until you get to Red, the best part of the entire game. But at what cost? Even though this battle is one of the most epic things to ever happen in the Pokemon series, I don't think it was worth all the trouble. It might be more worth it, however, if you play Crystal, my next pick on this list. There's not that big of a difference between Gold, Silver, and Crystal, but there is enough to make Crystal the most optimal way to play through Gen 2, especially if you play it on the 3DS's Virtual Console. The Virtual Console release finally allowed us to see the Celebi event that never made it to the West, and you could transfer it to Pokemon Home if you had the Poke Transporter, Pokemon Bank, and the aforementioned Pokemon Home. Yeah, moving Pokemon up from previous generations has never been easy, but Generation 1 and Generation 2 were trapped on the cartridges until the Virtual Console came around, so I'll take what I can get. If I haven't upset anyone by now with this list, the next spot will definitely do the trick. I don't like Heart Gold and Soul Silver much either. I'm sorry, I just really struggle getting through this region. I can totally see why these games are as praised as they are, but I can't place them any higher with all the problems I have with them. Also, I didn't finish them. I'm not that big of a pick up and play for an hour every day guy like this game wants me to be. I want to be able to do everything when I want to do it. I don't want to wait until Saturday to do a bug catching contest. I remember being so annoyed when I wanted to catch Lapras for my run through and having to wait until Friday to do it. I literally couldn't progress at all because I had to wait for 5 days until I could catch the Pokemon I wanted. I understand why in the originals, Johto's best Pokemon are locked behind the post game, and why gym leaders rarely use them. But Heart Gold and Soul Silver should have changed that. By the time these games were released, the concept of a new Pokemon generation as we see them today had been well established. When we get a new generation, we see and play with the new Pokemon right away. Gold and Silver weren't made with this notion in mind. They were the end of a series. They were more like a sequel or expansion to Red and Blue, whereas every generation afterwards had little connection to what came before, besides what was chosen to be in the regional decks. At least Heart Gold and Soul Silver implement elements of Crystal into them. This, along with the quality of life updates and the physical special split, make them the best way to play through Johto. Plus, it has the Battle Frontier, and specifically the Battle Factory, which gets major points from me. Again, I completely understand why Heart Gold and Soul Silver could be someone's favorite, but they just aren't for me. The next spot also belongs to another pair of remakes. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were remakes that I think are okay. While I love the original Gen 3 games, I wasn't a fan of X and Y, so implementing elements from X and Y into Ruby and Sapphire just brought these games down for me. Hoenn was being babyfied, and I wasn't having it. And don't even get me started on the Delta episode. It's just a long fetch quest. Don't get me wrong, flying around Hoenn on Mega Latios is awesome, but it gets annoying having to hop on, fly for a few seconds, land, watch a cutscene, and repeat for like an hour. The ending's cool, but the journey to get there was so tedious. It just makes losing the Battle Frontier even more painful. Speaking of things that are painful, it hurts my little heart that 97% of people watching my videos aren't subscribed to the channel. I'm gonna give it to you straight. This channel's gonna hit 1 million subs, probably in less than a year. Don't you want to support me and subscribe before we hit 1 million? Come on! Anyway, back to the list. This next one might seem confusing to viewers who've watched me the last few years, but Sword and Shield are the next games on my list. They're okay. If we're talking competitive Pokemon, these are some of the best games, if not the best in the series. In reality, Sword and Shield made raising a competitive team way easier than ever before. For someone who is constantly building new teams and competing in tournaments, this is a huge deal. I also can't stress how much of a positive this is for the health of the competitive scene. The actual game, on the other hand, not so great. Sword and Shield suffer from many of the same problems of Gen 6 and 7, but to varying degrees. It's easy, too linear, and too cutscene-y. I think we can all agree the best thing about the base game is the wild area, and it's not even that great. The 2 DLC areas were infinitely better. On the topic of DLC, I wasn't really a fan of them either. They did add a few more things for competitive players, but playing through the story wasn't very fun. It sort of reminded me of the Delta episode with the stop and go cutscene Bologna. I know I'm also in the minority here, but I think Dynamax is a great gimmick, at least in doubles. Singles is a whole other story. You can tell a lot of the mechanics in Sword and Shield were tailored to competitive players like me, but the games never fully won me over. Ha! Nice try, Game Freak. Maybe next time. If you've made it this far, you might have noticed a trend. I don't care for a lot of these games. Well, I don't hate them, except for Ultra Sun and Moon. Those games killed a part of me on the inside. The others I've mentioned have good qualities to them, but I can't say I like them as a whole. Sword and Shield are okay. I could even see myself playing them again in a few years. And the same goes for Red, Blue, Yellow, Fire Red, and Leaf Green. The reason I'm lumping these all together is because they're all essentially the same game. Fire Red and Leaf Green obviously get the upper head because there are graphics, quality of life updates, and mechanics such as abilities and natures, but playing through them is almost one for one with the originals. Of course, the Sevi Islands are new, but they sort of distract from the experience in my opinion. It's another fetch quest. What do I look like? A dog? Yes, I see the opportunity for the joke, but I'm not going to take it, okay? Another thing about the Sevi Islands. The game even goes out of its way to bring you there during the main story just to let you know, hey, remember, you still have some chores you gotta do after you beat the game. Ugh, just let me play the game. Red, Blue, and Yellow are only so high on this list because 1, they're iconic and provided the basis for the entire franchise. The gameplay, although flawed, is still fun, which can't be said for a lot of other games, even some released today. And the fact they got it so right all the way back then is genuinely incredible. The second reason, no story. I mean, there is a story, but the game doesn't bombard you with cutscenes at every corner. Honestly, the less story a Pokemon game has, the better. I hate being forced to get to a checkpoint and read giant chunks of exposition. Generation 1 and its remakes rarely do this, and it's a huge plus in my book. The main issue I have with Red, Blue, and Yellow is how primitive they seem compared to the updates we got in Gen 4. No physical special split, no online matchmaking, number of Pokemon. Generation 1 is also sort of broken, but I find this more endearing than annoying. You have to remember that this was the 90s, and Game Freak was so small it took them 6 years to make the original Red and Green, and that's with all the bugs they came with. The fact that Pokemon became the highest selling franchise in the world is a miracle. So even though it's tough to go back to Gen 1 now, I have to put them here, with the remakes right above them. Now we're into the good stuff. I think despite their flaws, Diamond and Pearl are great games. You probably already know the criticisms most people have towards these games. They're paced horribly and they run too slow. While I do agree with this, I never really noticed the first time I played through them. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure I would have noticed had I not heard it on the internet. I definitely remember the Great Marsh and routes 212 and 217 taking forever. Why is this girl just chilling in a puddle of mud? Other than its pacing, the legendaries were great and had a huge impact on the metagame too. A bunch of subpar Pokemon got evolutions, turning them into the competitive powerhouses we know today. Sorry, Electivire, you're on your own still. And without the physical special split introduced in these games, battling competitively would have been way less interesting. The split allowed for more Pokemon and moves to be competitively viable. Without it, there would be even less variation between teams than there is today. I mean, I'm happy I get to see you guys, but no, I didn't mean it as a jab. At the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, let me preface the next pick with this. I do really believe Pokemon games are better the less story they have. However, these games are so good on every other front that I can look past the intrusive and long-winded cutscenes. It also helps that this story was a huge departure from every game we got before. Does that mean it's a good story? Not really, but it did provide an interesting new perspective on the Pokemon world. This spot goes to Black and White. Remember at the end when all the Unova gym leaders show up to Ent's tower? Now that was a fantastic moment. Aside from that, the story never really gripped me. Nevertheless, everything else is incredible. The map might be linear, but the routes themselves have so much to explore. And unlike Johto, the rewards you get for doing so are actually worth it. Forcing us to only play with this generation's Pokemon was a gutsy move too. Even though it made a lot of people angry, I was fine with it because I actually loved these designs. The amount of hate they got was most likely a reaction to the region lock. We all know what happens when people can't play with their favorite Pokemon. Blah! Maybe I'm biased because these games are the first ones I started playing competitively on, but I don't think we've seen a better metagame since. Oh, stop it, you guys weren't even around yet. If this game cut the story down or included a Battle Frontier, I could see them being my favorite of all time. Another set of games that aren't my favorite of all time, but that I still love dearly, are Ruby and Sapphire. Every Pokemon game has good music, but these games take it to a whole new level. The amazing music that accompanies you through Hoenn's beautiful terrain displayed in glorious GBA graphics was mind-blowing at the time of its release, and still holds up today. I truly believe this to be the best Pokemon has ever looked, aesthetically. Playing through these games sort of makes me wish Pokemon would go back to 2D, because let's face it, Game Freak's not capable of making a Breath of the Wild style Pokemon game. At least, not on the Switch. Ruby and Sapphire also introduced natures, abilities, and double battles, some of the building blocks for competitive Pokemon as we know it today. I guess this is a hot take, but I actually really enjoyed contests. But only in this generation. This is the only one that got it right. I spent a ton of time with contests when I first played through Ruby. If the Pokemon Company had made a contest version of VGC, I would have been all over it. We'll talk more about Hoenn once I get to Emerald, but first, let's discuss my next pick, Platinum. Remember all the bad stuff I said about Diamond, Pearl, and their remake? Well, Platinum mostly fixes them. For one, the pacing is so much better in these games. You still have the areas that slow you down like deep snow or mud, but now you can at least see where you're gonna fall in. Surfing is faster, you can bike through buildings, you can scroll back on the Pokéetch, which for some reason wasn't in the remakes despite how simple it is. Even the story progression is better. Remember how you couldn't battle Fantina the first time you rode through Hearthome? What was that? That made the stretch between the second and the third gym so long. A few of the gyms also got redesigns that greatly improved upon the originals. Game Freak outdid themselves. Same goes for the Battle Frontier, which was just the battle tower in Diamond and Pearl. What was once a single tower where you battled opponent after opponent became 5 facilities, each with different gimmicks that allowed for a variety of gameplay. Unfortunately, Hoenn did it better, and that's why Emerald is my next pick. Hoenn's Battle Frontier is usually what people point to when they call Emerald their favorite Pokemon game of all time. Of its 7 facilities, my favorite one would have to be the Battle Factory, where you competed with rental Pokemon. I probably have 500 hours at least in Emerald's Battle Factory alone. But the Battle Frontier isn't the only new content that makes this game so good. There's also new gym layouts, gym rematches, a new gym leader. Let me address the people currently screaming at me through their monitors. I don't care that a third of the map is water. If anything, it adds to the game. Uh-oh, now everyone's screaming. Wait a second, hear me out. Without all the water, we wouldn't have got to explore the sunken ship. We wouldn't have found the Reggies. We wouldn't have got Sutopolis, Shoal Cave, Mirage Island. These are just a few of the many components that make Hoenn so iconic, and the only reason they exist is because of how much water there is. Much like Platinum, it's so good, it essentially makes the original games and their remakes irrelevant. If you're keeping track, you know what the final 2 picks are. How I placed them could be channel defining. My entire online presence, no, my entire being could be affected. What I say next could send ripples through the Pokemon community, shaping the thoughts of young, impressionable children for years to come. Am I about to change history? Nope. My number 2 is Legend Arceus. It came close, but there's another game that narrowly beats it out. That's not to say Legend Arceus isn't an amazing game. There's just a few kinks it would have to work out before getting there for me. Mainly, in its opening few hours, the tutorial section of this game is brutal. I was honestly questioning whether I would even like this game. But once you're given free reign to explore on your own, you can see its genius. The catching is so satisfying. The locomotion feels so good. Once you master both of these, the possibilities feel endless. You can traverse the sky with Braviary, but get low enough and you'll be automatically switched to Weirdeer or Basculegion. Hop off and throw out a Pokemon to smash a rock. While they're doing that, turn around and catch a Shinx. Repeat. These are mechanics I never knew I needed. The mechanics I never knew I didn't need were the new battle styles. Legends tries a new way of battling with strong style and agile style. I think it was a noble effort to change up the formula, but I don't think it was that successful. In fact, it was quite a failure, which is probably why there aren't many battles in this game. Because of this and the fact that there's no online battling system, it's not really that big of a deal. This is a case where the highs are so high I can forgive the lows. Now it's time for my number 1. My favorite Pokemon games of all time are Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. I know, very original, but hey, there's a reason why there's so many people's favorite games. Unlike Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which were almost identical to their original games, Black 2 and White 2 were legitimate sequels. I'm talking new story, new characters, new locations. Everything that made the originals great were still there, but with twists to address the concerns we had with them. You explored the region in a different order, so it wasn't as linear. You could catch Pokemon from previous generations, so you weren't restricted to Unovan Pokemon. You could find hidden grottos to catch Pokemon who had their hidden abilities instead of having to use the Dream World, or as I like to call it, the Nightmare World. I mean, look at this. For once, Game Freak did everything we asked, and it paid off. Black and White were already fantastic games. All it needed were some touch-ups. Throw in a new story too, and bam, best Pokemon games of all time. Had Black 2 and White 2 been an exact repeat of the originals, like every other enhanced version, this might not be the case. It's part of the reason why Emerald and Platinum aren't in this spot. Black 2 and White 2 are unique in that they function as the enhanced version and a sequel. It's not the same game done better. It's a whole new game. I always felt a little ripped off buying the third version of a game. Making sequels not only gets rid of that feeling, but it benefits the originals as well. Black and White weren't made obsolete by enhanced versions. They can stand alone. That's why they cost so much on the secondhand market. Other editions were Black Tower, White Tree Hollow, and the Pokemon World Tournament, featuring me. I'm not kidding, I'm technically in these games. But that's not what makes the World Tournament so great. It's the mix of nostalgia and difficulty it brings to the game. Battling gym leaders and champions from other regions was so cool. Black Tower and White Tree Hollow were these games' version of the Battle Tower, except with better lore, getting to fight Alder's grandson, and better rewards, a shiny Dratini or Gaibold depending on the game. I didn't even mention how much more there is to explore in these games. The post-game is loaded. It's a shame we might never get another game as good as these. The path the series has been on tells me we won't, but Scarlet and Violet are looking very promising. Being open world sounds like it could be fun, but Black 2 and White 2 weren't open world, and look how they turned out. Either way, I'm not losing hope. Well, that's my list. Feel free to leave yours in the comments below. I love seeing all the different ways people rank this series. That's another thing I love about these games. There's no universally accepted order for how to rank them. There's so many factors that influence our opinions on each one. Share your thoughts and don't get mad at each other for having a different opinion. They're just games after all. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you again soon.